Ahoy hoy, YouTube. How are you? I'm great. Look what I found when I moved. My old Camp Queen Elizabeth t-shirt from back in the day. I thought, this is a summertime review. I would have been wearing this shirt around this time, years and years ago, so why not wear it today? Now, we got 5 things, as per the usual. First 3 are all things that I watched. So no books this time, but a lot of movies. And a couple of games too. First thing I watched, brand new documentary on Netflix about a few weeks ago maybe, Titan, the Oceangate Disaster. If you're not familiar with this story, it's a strange one. So it's all about this guy who designed his own deep sea submersible because he wanted to do commercial tours down to wreck sites like the Titanic specifically. So his name was Stockton Rush. I believe, if I remember correctly, he was an engineer. And they said he wasn't the greatest student. And I think he was originally focused on aerospace, but at some point shifted his focus to undersea exploration. So he founded this company called Oceangate, and they had been in operation for quite some time. But I think this all started back in 2017-18, which led up to this disaster. The problem was he wanted to pull off this scenario of taking people down to see the wreck of the Titanic and stuff, but he needed to do it as cheap as possible. Never a good point of view when you're going into a dangerous situation like that, right? So most deep sea submersibles are made of like steel, titanium, really heavy but really strong substances that can deal with the increasing amounts of water pressure the deeper you go. So the problem with that is that it's expensive, and then you also have to have a bigger operation because the subs are so heavy and stuff. You need a bigger boat to transport them. You need a bigger rig on the boat to get them in and out of the water. So he focused on a carbon fiber body for the sub. Lighter, cheaper, but not as strong. So they were showing tests that he would do. He would go down, I don't know how deep, but they hooked microphones up to the hull of the sub, and you could just hear on the thing like ping, plum, ping, plum, and that was the carbon fibers within the hull starting to break as he reached certain amounts of pressure. So he's down there by himself and seemed to have no problem with it. And I was sitting there going like, I would never ever. And I love the Titanic. I've been fascinated with that story and that wreck since I was a kid. And I think Pepsi had a contest in the early 2000s about being able to go down there, winning a contest and being able to go down there. And I tried my hardest to find one of the caps under the things under the cap, but to no avail. But this guy just seemed to do everything the wrong way. And so there were interviews with people in the Oceangate company that witnessed everything that went on, whistleblowers, whatever, and the genuine thoughts on this guy is that he was crazy, like, and not crazy like blah, 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 but like just arrogant. I'm the boss. Everybody does what I say. It's gonna work out. You know, like just total like, no, nobody else here has a say or is in charge. I'm the guy. So, and the people that they interviewed that eventually left the company were talking about, yeah, like if you disagreed with him on something, he either just froze you out or he fired you. Like there was this one girl, a really cute girl who was an intern at the time, and she was like, I saw what was going on and I didn't agree with it, and it was really uncomfortable. Let me just see if this is still recording. I don't know if some sort of alert. Anyways, where was I? Oh yeah, so she was like, this was all going on during COVID. Like, she's like, it was so hard to find a job during that. She's like, I wanted to leave. I didn't want to be part of this anymore, but what could I do? I needed the job, sort of thing. So it was really interesting to see how the whole thing unfolded, and how this guy just at every turn just led them into disaster. And I remember one interview with a guy. So the Titanic is the closest landmass to the Titanic wreck is Newfoundland. So they were operating out of Newfoundland, and at the end of the season, they traveled back to, I can't remember if they were in California or something like that, or Massachusetts. I don't remember. Doesn't matter. But they left the sub on the dock in Newfoundland, and there was a recorded telephone conversation from a guy calling this Stockton Rush guy and saying, you can't leave that sub on the dock over the winter. Like, it's gonna freeze. If there's any water inside that thing, it could compromise. Like, you need to take it back with you and keep it in safe inside storage. And the guy was like, it'll be fine. So there was all these things, just poor judgment and just lack of any sort of concern. Like, everything was going to be fine. And they said, like, the number of dives this guy did in this sub, like, they're surprised this disaster didn't happen beforehand. Like, they're surprised he got away with that many trips under the ocean with this thing, right? So I can't remember when. It was in 2023 when the accident finally occurred. But there was 5 people in the sub. The Stockton Rush guy, one of his main guys on his staff, like one of the most experienced deep sea submersible guys in the whole wide world, which they thought was kind of weird that he would go along with this, because you'd think he would know, right? And then there was some guy that I think had paid to go down, and then another guy and his son that had paid to go down, I believe is how it worked. And yeah, they just the hull finally had enough on this dive, and it imploded, and obviously they all died instantly. So, and then I remember at the time, because I'm fascinated with Titanic, when I heard about this thing, I was like, oh man, that's crazy. And I remember the news footage back in 2023 when they finally located the wreck of the Titan and brought it up. And I remember them, like, the footage from Newfoundland Harbor or whatever, with them pulling it out of the water and off a boat and into the scrapyard sort of thing. So, so yeah, really crazy story. Just like with the original Titanic disaster and the lack of lifeboats, the missing binoculars, influence from the chairman of White Star, whatever, that all those things that contributed to the disaster, and all of the laws and regulations that ultimately come out of a situation like that. I'm sure with this story, it taught people the wrong things to do in this line of work. So hopefully some positive will come out of, such a disastrous situation, right? Next up, on Father's Day, we didn't do much. We just went over to my dad's house. I brought him a bottle of wine. We ordered pizza, blah, blah, blah. And then we ended up getting on the subject of a certain movie. And we're like, maybe we should just watch it. And I've always wanted to see it, especially after me and Simon and everybody were playing Broforce. And one of the characters in Broforce is the main character in this movie. And I'm like, geez, I really need to see this movie just to see what it's all about, because I've heard about it since I was a kid. And the movie in question is Dirty Harry. This classic flick was released in 1971 and focuses on Dirty Harry Callahan, a policeman in the San Francisco, or detective, I guess, in the San Francisco Police Department, and he's played by Clint Eastwood. A killing, at the start of the movie, a killing has just happened, a murder. Some guy with a sniper rifle from a rooftop kills some beautiful, beautiful woman swimming in a pool, a rooftop pool, and Dirty Harry is the one that comes to investigate it. And he finds some clues, and eventually this guy that kills the woman, who later they dub Scorpio, puts a request into the police department saying, I'm gonna keep killing people unless y'all give me $100,000. And we all laughed at that, right? Because you all think of like Dr. Evil, $1 million, right? And it's just so funny as we're thinking, yeah, like 1971, $100,000 would have been a lot of money back then, right? You're expecting the million, 2 million, 10 million, right? And it's like, no, this is 1971, yeah, $100,000. So the cops try and stall this guy. They're like, well, it's gonna take us a while to run out the money. Like, you can't keep killing people. We'll get it for you, whatever. So it's just this chase throughout the rest of the movie of Dirty Harry trying to catch up to this guy. So before they can get the money together or track him down, he kills a little black boy, and then his next target, they're kind of studying his patterns and whatever, and they think he's going to kill a priest. So they set up a sting for him, which ultimately the priest is saved, but they get into a rooftop shootout, and the guy eventually gets away. And so there's all these different stages of them almost catching him and whatever. So they eventually, after all this, after they try and track him down, he sends in a new request saying, okay, I want 200 grand. And by the way, I got a girl, gives them her name. I've put her in this place where if you don't get to her, she's gonna die. So the quicker you get me the money, the sooner that girl's not gonna die, sort of thing. So then a helicopter spots this guy on the rooftops as he's about to shoot his next victim. So they end up getting in a chase. Harry tracks him down, but Scorpio gets the drop on him and beats Harry down a bit. Harry manages to stab him in the leg, and then the guy gets away, and Harry tracks him based on, like, he goes around to hospitals and stuff, and like, did you treat a gun or a knife wound to the leg or the hip or whatever he got him in? And yeah, and so he tracked him down and figured out who this guy is. And they say, oh, he's a groundsman at the baseball diamond or whatever, the big park. So Harry tracked him down there, and eventually ferrets out, after he kind of tortures Scorpio a bit, ferrets out the information on where this girl is. She's been holed up in a well somewhere, but by the time they get to her, she's dead. And because of the way Harry went about getting the information from this Scorpio guy without a search warrant, blah, 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 all that shit, a little bit of torture, they say, well, all that evidence is inadmissible in court, so he's going to get off. And this is what I hate about the justice system. Like, who cares how you get the information? He's a fucking serial killer. Like, the lawyers that would argue in this guy's case, like, these are the scumballs of the universe, right? Other than the killers themselves, they're second in line, you know, the killer defenders, right? So this guy gets out, and the police chief is like, Harry, we're taking you off the case. And he's like, oh, fuck all you anyways, right? Like, he's just such a cool character. Eventually, what this guy does is he hijacks a school bus full of kids, and with some older woman driving, and they're all freaked out, and he's like, just drive and you'll be okay. And so he gets the cops on the line again and says, okay, I want my 200 grand, and I want a plane fueled up on the runway to take me to wherever, and y'all better do it, or I got a busload of kids that are going to get it, right? So Harry is aware of this situation, and he, vigilante justice, tracks down the school bus, gets on it, and eventually kills this Scorpio guy. I think they're in a mining facility or something. That's where they end up at the end of the school bus chase. And Harry gets his just desserts on this guy, and makes sure he's dead, that he's not going to escape again and get out of jail, sort of thing. So, great movie. Really cool story, really great actors, and I love watching older movies because it takes me back to a time that I like a lot more than the state of the world now is just, so much crap going on in the world. Just everybody, even if you had people that were normal and smart beforehand, they've all become stupid idiots. I think it's cat trying to get in. I blame a lot of it on the whole woke movement. That's really softened a lot of people up and taken all common sense out of the world. And when I see older stuff from when I was a kid or a lot younger, like the old cars, the quality of the footage, the old fashioned and stuff like that, it just takes me back, and I really enjoy watching older movies like that. And I've always heard Dirty Harry's an amazing movie, and it was. So it's nice all these years later to finally see it. I mean, that movie's older than I am, and here I am in my late 40s finally watching it for the first time. So that's a lot of fun. And apparently there's 3 sequels as well. Movies I've all heard of that I didn't realize were elements of, like, the Deadpool, and I forget the other one. I've heard of that movie forever. I did not realize it was a Dirty Harry movie. So I might have some other things to get to watching, right? Next up. What is next up? I'm trying to think. What did I watch? Sorry, I had to splice the video in that spot because I forgot what the third thing I watched was. So I had to go into my phone and check. The third thing I watched was an absolute comedy classic from the 80s when I was a kid that I watched relentlessly by myself with all my friends, and it is called Spaceballs. They just recently announced, Mel Brooks announced, they're doing a Spaceballs sequel that I think is supposed to be out in 2027 sometime. So we got talking about Spaceballs, my buddies and I, and then James was like, oh, I've never seen Spaceballs. We should watch Spaceballs. I'm like, giddy up, let's watch Spaceballs. So this movie's from 1987, and it's a huge spoof on especially the Star Wars trilogy, the original one. And there's elements of other movies in there too, like Alien, Planet of the Apes, 2001: A Space Odyssey. There's a whole bunch of elements of those types of movies mixed into this movie. And so basically the story is on the planets, or I forget if the planet's called Spaceballs, or that the race of people are called the Spaceballs. So on their home planet, they've basically just abused their planet and they're running out of air. They've so much, I guess, pollution, whatever. And so Scroob, the leader of the Spaceballs, comes up with a plan to steal the atmosphere from planet Druidia, which is a peaceful planet ruled over by some king, and they have a big shield around the planet that keeps the atmosphere in. So Scroob is like, we're gonna take their atmosphere, we're gonna save our planet, fuck Druidia, right? So there's two other things going on at the same time. First, on planet Druidia, Princess Vespa has been set to marry Prince Valium, and she wants no part of it. She doesn't like this guy, and she doesn't want to be married to him. She's putting up a fuss, and as the ceremony finally begins and she gets to the altar, she's like, nope, sorry, and she runs away, gets in a spaceship, blasts away from Druidia, out of the shield, and into outer space. The third thing that's going on is that Lone Star and his furry companion Barf are in their spaceship. I forget the name of it, the Eagle something, but it's basically a Winnebago with wings. That's their spaceship. It's pretty funny. And they get contacted by Pizza the Hut, who they owe 1 million space bucks to. Pizza's like, boys, where's my money? So they're like, oh yeah, we're just on our way to give it to you, blah, blah, blah. And so they're basically in deep with Pizza the Hut and need to find this money. After they talk to Pizza the Hut, they get a call from the King of Druidia, who has informed them that Princess Vespa and her protocol droid Dot Matrix have escaped the planet after she bailed on the wedding, and he's gonna pay them 1 million space bucks, handily enough, to get them back and bring them home safely. So naturally, the three parties all kind of mix, as just as Lone Star and Barf are able to track down Vespa and Dot Matrix and rescue them. The Spaceballs in their big ship have been chasing Princess Vespa, and Lone Star and Barf were able to rescue them at the last minute, but they take some damage on the ship and they crash land on a desert planet called Vega or something like that. Yeah, I may be wrong on that. But basically Tatooine, right? So they are stranded in the desert, and after a certain amount of time passes and they have no water, no food, whatever, they all collapse. But then whatever race is representing the Jawas in this Spaceballs movie find them and rescue them and take them to this underground cave where they meet Yogurt, the wise old master of everything. And so Yogurt gives them shelter, helps them get back on their feet and get rested up. And he especially has a lot of conversations with Lone Star. Lone Star is sensitive to the Schwartz, which is the Force in this spoof. And he talks about Lone Star's connection to the Schwartz and how he can use it and whatever. And then Lone Star also has this medallion around his neck that he's had since he can remember, but it's in this weird language, and he doesn't know what it means. So Yogurt looks at it and he's like, oh yeah. Well, what does it mean? Well, I can't tell you that. So it's obvious that Yogurt knows what's going on here, but he's not telling Lone Star for some reason. So eventually, these guys get their ship back up and running. They leave as the Spaceballs are kind of track them down. Princess Vespa and Dot Matrix kind of take off on Lone Star and Barf as they're getting ready to kind of go about their next move. And the two main leaders of the Spaceballs military branch are Colonel Sanders and Dark Helmet. So Dark Helmet is basically the Darth Vader in this movie. So Dark Helmet pulls off a trick where he changes his appearance to be Princess Vespa's dad, the king, and he shows up on the planet and lures her into Dark Helmet's clutches after he tricks him with that little deception, and eventually the Spaceballs capture Vespa and Dot Matrix, and so then Lone Star and Barf are forced to infiltrate the capital ship of the Spaceballs and try and rescue Vespa and Dot Matrix. And after they do so, or as they're doing so, I guess, the ship transforms into this big robot with a vacuum cleaner, and it settles over the shield over planet Druidia. And after they locate the codes to open or acquire the codes to open the hatch on this shield, after the Spaceballs threaten to turn Princess Vespa's nose back to what it originally was before she had her surgery, the king gives them the codes, no problem. So everything's just ridiculous and funny, right? So they start sucking the air out of the atmosphere of Druidia. Everybody's like, oh, they can't breathe anymore. They're starting to pass out. The end is nigh, but Lone Star and Barf, after swooping in to rescue Vespa and Dot Matrix, also Lone Star uses the Schwartz to flip the switch on the big robot holding a vacuum to blow instead of suck. So it all shoots the atmosphere back into Druidia, and then they fly off and they hit the self-destruct inside of the spaceship after Lone Star and Dark Helmet have a bit of a duel with their various Schwartz abilities. And once Lone Star gets the drop on Dark Helmet, the self-destruct is pressed. Lone Star escapes with his comrades, and they return to Druidia. And he was promised a big reward, obviously, this 1 million space bucks, but in the end he chooses not to take it because there's sexual tension between Lone Star and Princess Vespa the whole time. And so he just, he doesn't want to take the money, and he just leaves. But as he's in the ship with Barf afterwards, after they leave Druidia, Yogurt contacts them and talks about some stuff. And then he goes, oh yeah, Lone Star, by the way, that medallion around your neck, it means you're a prince. And so Princess Vespa had to marry a prince. That's why her dad had set her up with this idiot Prince Valium. So as soon as Lone Star knows, I'm a prince, back to Druidia. So he gets back just in time to interrupt the wedding ceremony between Vespa and Valium, and basically take over and marry her instead. And that's how Spaceballs ends. So I'm very curious to see what's the new Spaceballs movie is going to be like, because there's no actual trailer for it yet. There's just a teaser trailer that just basically has a big Star Wars scroll, you know, at the start of the movies, all the writing, and then a little bit of a spot by Mel Brooks afterwards. And it's really funny, the scroll. Like, there's so much hilarity in it, talking about what movies have been released since the last Spaceballs. Basically, all the cannon fodder they're going to be able to use for this next movie, right? Because yeah, like when Spaceballs was made, there was only the original trilogy. So now they've got the prequel trilogy, the Force Awakens trilogy, all the TV shows, all the cartoons. You know, like there's so much, all the standalone movies, like not Rogue One. Is that it? The one with Cassian Andor, I forgot what it's. Yeah, it's Rogue One, right? That's one of the best ones. Whew. But they've got so much more material now that they can use for this next movie, and not just within the Star Wars universe, but all the other movies that also influenced the original Spaceballs, like Aliens and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be pretty cool when it finally does come out, but we'll find out for sure in a couple of years. I may not be alive then. Who knows? Anyways, next up, 2 video games to finish things off. And the first one is a continuation of a game I recently reviewed. And this game in particular is called the Mega Man Legacy Collection 2. This collection was released in 2017 originally, and basically is the exact same thing as the Mega Man Legacy Collection 1. Just basically, the first Legacy Collection had the first 6 games of the series, which were all on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and then the Mega Man Legacy Collection 2 had the remaining 4 games, so Mega Man 7, 8, 9, 10. Which were released for various different systems. I think 7 was Super Nintendo, 8 was PS1, and then 9, 10 were basically released on everything because they were relatively newer in the mid-2000s or whatever. So yeah, it basically includes these 4 games, so you can play through those 4 Mega Man games as you would have on the original consoles, and then in terms of alternate modes, it has the same as the first collection. You have your challenges, so it basically mixes up different aspects of the 4 games in this collection, and gives you these short little level challenges to perform that they time you on, and you can pass with bronze, silver, gold sort of thing. So it really keeps you playing the game longer, because they are, even though you've played all these levels in the games, or portions of levels in the actual games, I don't know, there's something about, you know, doing them and getting a medal and possibly getting trophies, right? So they really suck you in trying to get all these extra things done. And then of course there's a museum and a sound option where you can listen to all the game music, you can look at all the characters and the artwork and stuff like that. So there's really quite a bit of stuff in it. And there's also time attack modes. Mega Man 10 I think had some I can't remember if it was 9 or 10, but they had some levels that weren't in the game, but they have them in this time attack mode or whatever, so you can see what else they designed for the game, but ultimately didn't put in it. So that was kind of neat. But yeah, Mega Man, I've talked enough about Mega Man over the past that you kind of know probably now what I'm talking about if you've watched my other videos. But that Mega Man's my favorite game series of all time. It's just such a neat game, and then every game afterwards was great in its own way, and they changed things up a little bit here and there, but they kept the core of what makes that game great intact throughout the whole thing, and that's why it's my favorite franchise. Like, I love the original Mega Man game, and especially Mega Man 2, it's my favorite, and they just kept releasing similar type of titles that were equally as good, or almost equally as good, and yeah, that's the way to do it. Don't change things just for the sake of changing. Change for change's sake itself is rarely good. Change should only happen if it is necessary. A lot of people don't realize that, right? But that's my bit of advice today. Only change if you have to. Last up, amazing game, released in 2021, I believe, and it's a prequel to the original game in the series. And the game I'm talking about today is Little Nightmares 2. Yeah, my buddy Simon loves these games. He loves those horror type games. So I wouldn't have really known about these games if it wasn't for him having them on his systems. And as soon as I saw a little bit of the original Little Nightmares, I was like, oh yeah, I gotta get these games. These are great. So I got Little Nightmares. Was it a free game? It might have been a free PS Plus game, and Little Nightmares 2 is for sure a free PS Plus game. So I didn't even have to pay money for these games, and got to enjoy them. But anyways, like I said, Little Nightmares 2 is a prequel to Little Nightmares, and it begins with this kid, this boy named Mono, who wears a paper bag over his head. He has a dream about this hallway with a door at the end of it that has this eye thing on it, and he wakes up from this nightmare, and he feels the need to find this hallway and this door. So he wakes up, he's in the forest, he starts exploring, he finds the shack. Inside the shack, he finds Six, I believe is what her name is, the main character of the first Little Nightmares game. And so they team up at that point, and they have to escape the shack, which is patrolled by a hunter with a big shotgun. So you have to escape from him, eventually get the drop on him, kill him with the shotgun, and eventually they reach a lake and they use a door as a raft and they float across and eventually come to a place called the Pale City. And it's always raining there. It's all run down and spooky and dark and misty. And they move through this Pale City, and the first big location is a school where they have to make their way through the school, but there's all these little weird marionette children that want to attack them. There's this weird long-necked teacher that is always on the lookout for them. If you make any sort of sound, she'll cue in on you, and you got to kind of sneak past her and whatever. And then once they get through the school, they get into a hospital where there's all these weird marionettes that will, when you turn your back on them, they'll move towards you, but if you turn around and shine your light on them, they freeze. And then there's this doctor that climbs through the ceilings that you need to sneak by. It's really crazy shit. There's some weird stuff in this game, and it's amazing. So there's also many TVs throughout the Pale City, and you can use the TVs to teleport to a different TV to different areas. So you have to use that aspect to kind of navigate your environment. And it's very much, there's a lot of action in the game, but it's also a lot of puzzling. You got to figure things out, figure out the puzzles, and move on to the next area while dealing with these freaks that are trying to eat you, sort of thing. So eventually, I'll spoil it for you, so stop here if you don't want to know. Eventually, in the end, you kind of get close to that doorway in that hallway, and there's this, I call him the Slender Man. He's a really tall, lean guy with a weird hat on, who was a main villain in the original Little Nightmares game. And he's stalking you through the TV, and he kidnaps Six and takes her somewhere. And then eventually he chases you. He comes out of a TV, and you've got to elude him. And eventually you do, and you locate Six again, but this guy has morphed her into this huge version of herself, and she's kind of like a freak, and she's got this little music box that she's very protective of, and you need to smash it in order to release her from this spell or whatever it is she's under. So you have to kind of work to elude her while smashing the music box, and after you do so like 4 or 5 times, I think it is, she eventually shrinks back into normal Six, and you guys can proceed. But then the whole environment starts falling apart. There's all these weird eyeballs and freakish flesh things, and so you're running at the end of the game to escape this. And just as you are about to escape, you have to make this big long jump where Six kind of has to grab your arm and help you across. And so this happens, and you're hanging there for a few seconds, and I'm like, oh no, she's gonna fucking betray me. And she does. She drops you into the pit of all these weird eyeballs and ooze and stuff. And so as the game kind of ends, it shows you, after you dropped into this pit, sitting on a wooden chair on top of this oozing mass of biological nonsense. And it kind of flashes forward in time, and you see this person, this mono kid sitting on the chair, grow a little bit older, a little bit bigger, a little bit older, a little bit bigger. And before it got to the end, I was like, oh my God, he's going to turn into the Slender Man. Like that's where this is going. And that's what does happen. After a certain amount of time passes, he turns into the Slender Man. And so he takes over the role of Slender Man, and I'm pretty sure he's then the antagonist in the Little Nightmares, the original Little Nightmares game, right? So I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah, just this game is almost perfect. There's a few control issues here and there. There's not a lot, but it does creep up every once in a while with where things don't quite work that well. But it's very far and few between, so it's not a big deal. But otherwise, the game is just like a masterpiece. It's so cool looking. The enemies they throw your way are so weird and so freakish. They really are spooky, and the puzzles too. They're not easy. A lot of them are, but they really get you thinking at some points, and you really have to figure out what the hell you're doing, and do a certain sequence several times before you finally figure it out, right? So it's a game that keeps you thinking, a game that keeps you on your toes, and a game that's just an utter joy to play. And it's relatively short. I think I maybe did 7, 8, 9 sessions of like an hour at a time before it was done, but not quite as short as Brothers. Brothers was really short, but this game isn't that much longer than it. But it's definitely worth the play because it is so much fun and it is so weird. We love weird around here. So, speaking of weird, I'm pretty fucking weird, and I'm done here. So until next time, stay cool. Meow.